Hello and welcome to the Unity Mars session here at the ARM DevSummit. My name's Dan Miller. I'm a senior developer advocate focused on XR here at Unity. Today we'll be covering a broad overview of really what is Unity Mars, talking about some of the reasons why you might use it, some of the advantages, and really what it offers as a development platform. So let's go ahead and dive in and give a brief overview of the different topics we'll be covering. First, I'll start with the basics, talking about really why we saw the need and why we wanted to develop Mars, some of the problems that it solves, and some of the challenges when developing augmented reality. Next, we'll be covering how to really get started building a project, where to get Unity Mars, and some of the different templates and things that you can utilize. Next, we'll talk about how Unity Mars works with other AR tools, especially within the Unity ecosystem, talking about how you can start to extend Unity Mars and really customize it for your specific needs. Finally, I'll end with some additional resources so that you can continue your learning, watch different webinars and content, as well as stay up to date on all the new news coming out with Unity Mars. So really at its core, Unity Mars is an authoring environment with specialized tools and workflows specifically built for creating intelligent AR experiences. And here at Unity, when we were creating a lot of our platform integrations and seeing people create content within the augmented and mixed reality space, we saw a lot of interesting content, but we really wanted more. We wanted more intelligent AR experiences that work in a variety of different environments and different rooms. And we also wanted to provide developers with a tooling and with a set of capabilities to empower these more intelligent AR experiences. And throughout this presentation, I'll really define what that actually means, what tools we're providing, and how we can give you different resources, as well as set up this authoring environment for enabling this. Now, what can you create with Unity Mars? When we think about this, it's really at a high level. It's kind of like asking, what can you do with a hammer, or what can you do with a pair of pliers? We look at things like industrial use cases with tutorials and workflows, as well as pre-visualization, and how you can start to build different things like walkthroughs. In the mixed reality space, we look at how we can enable things like e-commerce, visualizing different products in the space, as well as just thinking about what the future of buying and purchasing might look like as this technology continues to advance. And finally, we're looking at things like IoT devices. How can we start to bring in and pull data from different sources? How can we start to set up ways that you can author against those different sources and incorporate that data into these custom augmented and mixed reality applications? And when we were building this, we really asked ourselves, why do you need Mars? Or what are some of the biggest challenges when developing augmented reality? And I'll touch on this at a couple different areas, but really when you think about developing AR, it's really at this abstract level. You're not really able to kind of visualize different planes or different parts of the environment. And so with Unity Mars, we wanted you to be able to bring in that real world data, author against it within your application, and set up different parameters and use cases so that your content intelligently spawns. With Unity Mars, it actually enables this within the Unity editor itself. You'll see me describe the simulation view where you can pull in different environments, as well as what we call fuzzy authoring. And I'll define this a little bit more later, but it's the idea of setting up conditions that allow your content to spawn based on broad ranges rather than specific parameters. So what exactly does Unity Mars do? Let's really get down and define some of the key components here. Here's an example of an editor that you might set up when utilizing Unity Mars. And there's a couple different custom panels. At the end of the day, you're still within the Unity editor. You have your scene hierarchy as well as your scene view. And you can see the content lives here just as if it would in a normal Unity project. One of the exciting things about Unity Mars is while we provide this additional tooling, you're still within the Unity ecosystem. If you have custom tools or custom logic or just different platforms that you're integrating, Unity Mars provides that base on top of the familiar Unity editor. Now, one of the first panels is the custom Mars panel. This is where you'll get pre-built objects like proxies, as well as buttons for visualizing things like planes. This is really the main panel you'll use when creating content within Unity Mars. Next is the simulated environment. This is one of the most powerful features of Unity Mars, giving you the ability to simulate different real-world environments. It comes with 20 different sim environments, everything from a kitchen table and a living room, all the way up to a museum and a factory. I'll be describing a little bit more of how to utilize these sim environments in some future slides. Next is the content hierarchy. This is how the content in your scene view matches up with the simulated environment. It shows the different queries and conditions that are matched and allows you to see how and where your content is placed. And lastly, we have the simulated device view. The device view is similar to the simulation view in that it provides a visualization of the simulated environment. Some of the additional capabilities in the device view is that it allows you to actually move around and simulate what it would be like to use a mobile augmented reality device. You can do things like plane finding as well as feature point detection. You can also record different sessions in the device view and then play those back as you move throughout the sim view. So again, at the end of the day, you're still within the Unity editor, but you have these custom panels provided within the Mars ecosystem. Now, when we shift over and we start talking about some of the big advantages of Unity Mars, we usually think about it in three unique pillars. The first pillar is define. Here we can see a video of someone dragging and dropping some content and then pulling up a menu item to define different conditions on how this content is spawned. Here we're adjusting the plane size condition, which allows you to increase or decrease the both maximum and minimum size. You can see once we've changed it, our query matches different environment or surfaces. Here we've selected the smaller chair and now included that within the range. This is how we start to define how content can be spawned and where. You can see we've gone through a couple of different sim environments and configured our content to be able to spawn there automatically. One of the key ideas here is proxy-based workflows. You can think of proxies as representations of real-world objects, and the framework allows you to place content relative to that. Your app can then respond to it as you're moving around in the environment. Next is fuzzy authoring. This is this idea of setting up a range of conditions or range of parameters that allow your content to spawn on different surfaces. There's a variety of different conditions and parameters that you can adjust, and you're really setting ranges rather than specifying exactly how your content can spawn. And lastly is what you see is what you get authoring, or WYSIWYG. It's this idea of taking the familiar Unity workflows with drag and drop functionality and being able to emulate and simulate how your content is within the simulation view. You're able to drag your content on these associated proxies, pull up different condition paradigms and menus, and then set those as you continue to author your content. Next is test. And I've talked a lot about this with the simulated environment. This is something that's unique to Unity Mars, and it really ends up speeding up your iteration time and workflow. We're providing this simulated environment, and you can see as the user moves around in their device view, the simulation view is casting those simulated raycast, finding different planes as well as feature points. And then you can see the content is actually spawned on the different found surfaces. This is really giving you this ability to continue to test, refine some of the conditions that you've set up, and modify your content to fit and spawn exactly how you want it depending on your application. We've tested it in that original living room, and now we've switched to a different sim environment, continuing to test, refine the content, and see how it spawns and works in multiple environments. And this is this idea of really testing directly in the editor. Now, as I mentioned before, we provide different simulated environments to you, but you also have the ability to pull in and create your own simulated environments. If you're authoring or building content for a very specific use case or a very specific location, you can always go in, author that location, bring that in, and there's documentation on how to set it up and get it to work within the simulated environment. We have lots of customers working in very specific locations like factories or a museum, and they've built out a simulation view so as they continue to iterate and author their content, they're in the same location at which their content will be experienced. And lastly is deliver. When we talk about how the content works within the editor, how you're continuing able to test and build, this also works on device. And this is really the full circle where we're building our content and then it's able to then be visualized here within the app itself. So this is footage from Dr. Seuss ABC, and it's a little bit of alpha footage here where they're building out some of the functionality of what Unity Mars can do. You can see the content is kind of auto-populated, and we've built it around. We have this tree, and you're able to click that within the app, as well as that camel creature that can kind of pathfind around within the content itself. One of the nice things about the workflow here is that everything that you get within the Unity Mars editor also comes back within this on-device experience. So you'll see the user switch back into the editor, and they've set up a simulation view that's kind of like the view we have here. When you think about things like mouse clicks working within the Unity editor, those translate over to taps within the device view itself. Here's another here's another real world environment, and you can see things happening like occlusion with the different planes found, and really putting this content in this real world context. And here we are within the Unity editor on the simulation view. And this kind of ties back to delivering these intelligent AR experiences. Thinking about the real world and authoring content, specifying it for things like plane finding, as well as image markers and face detection. So at its core, Unity Mars is a set of tools and extensions to the Unity editor. You're still within Unity, and this is an additional layer on top of it. We're building things like companion apps that allow you to create as well as set up recordings of how your sessions are on devices and then pull those back into the Unity editor, really completing this loop of using these AR devices and then providing that data to author against. At its core, Unity Mars is built on top of AR Foundation with hooks for additional data providers. Unity Mars is an add-on to your Unity subscription. You can try it out now for a free 45-day trial, or you can buy a license for an annual cost of $600 US. Now, when thinking about which individuals on your team might utilize or need a Unity Mars license, if you're using things like the simulation view and testing within the editor, you will need a Unity Mars license. If you have someone who's maybe just working on setting up UI and isn't using the full capabilities, they can still work on a project using Unity Mars, but might not need a license for their specific Unity seat. So, what are really the benefits? And a lot of these come from talking with different customers and seeing how people are utilizing Unity Mars today. The biggest thing we've seen is it greatly speeds up your workflows as well as the iteration time in developing these applications. People are able to develop applications quicker, get them to the launch, and release them on the devices. It also gives you this ability to create AR content visually. You no longer need to be the most advanced coder, and you also don't have to reason about this kind of abstract meaning of how you're developing your content within AR. Instead, you're able to do things like drag and drop functionality, author directly within the simulation view itself. Unity Mars was specifically built for creating content and being flexible for what we call custom data. And I'll talk about this a little bit here in a moment. Next is the built-in systems for logical layout, rules, and more. This is really that framework for how Unity Mars interacts with the real world and how we're able to go in, speed up things like different walkthrough systems for training, as well as just place our content. So now let's talk a little bit about handling data from different sources. So the Unity Mars reasoning and data APIs are really set up to be extendable. We provide things like semantic understanding as well as different data provider formats. And what this allows us to do is really help you as a developer or a creator start to understand where the data is coming from and giving you more opportunities about how your content is placed and how your content interacts with this data. We're also providing different sources for you as a developer to extend based on different custom data you might utilize. So when talking about extending Unity Mars, we think about two key parts. The first is synthetic data or traits. This is how you can start to tag different objects, as well as doing things like integrating custom data for IoT devices. Next is functionality injection. This is a little bit more complex, but it gives you the ability to do things like author custom tracking objects or custom data. You will need to store a local version of Unity Mars as you start to extend it and add to some of the framework and scripts. But it is possible to create entirely custom objects and interact with them in the simulation view. This is unique for different APIs as well as potentially custom tracking data that hasn't yet been integrated with Unity Mars. Now, I've talked a lot about AR Foundation, and this is really Unity's abstraction on top of the different AR platforms. It gives you the ability to build to all the different AR ecosystems, and really it provides this unified set of APIs to start authoring against. By default, Unity Mars is released with the verified version of AR Foundation. So depending on what version of Unity you're using, such as the 2019.4 LTS version, you'll get a certain version of AR Foundation. Now, the cool thing is that you can always update this depending on what functionality you need or some additional content. So things like the 4.0 version of AR Foundation is compatible with Unity 2019.4. So if you wanted custom data for things like object tracking or body tracking, you can go ahead and update those and still continue to build with Unity Mars. Now, I wanted to end with some additional resources so that you can continue to learn and understand how Unity Mars works, as well as stay up to date on all the different features and functionality we're releasing. So the main page here for Unity Mars is the product page. You can find this at unity.com/products/Unity Mars. There's a lot of different past webinars that we've done, and I'm a little bit biased because I've been included in some of these, But there's different ones for the latest features like rules, which is actually a visual system for setting up different conditions. There's also an Ask Me Anything with the dev team, where we go through and talk with different developers that are on the Unity Mars team and answer some of the most frequented questions that we've been hearing. Lastly, there's a recent webinar with the team at Sugar Creative who created the ABC Dr. Seuss application. And this goes through some of the reasons and some of the benefits that they've found in utilizing and working with Unity Mars. Now, I also wanted to talk about some of the more complex features within Unity Mars are available within the documentation itself. The team has done a really good job of documenting some of the different content, how to do things like extend Mars, and how the data flow goes through from the different platforms and APIs up into the simulation view. And that's it for my presentation. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the different content as well are excited about getting started and creating with Unity Mars. Thanks.